Cole walked down the silent metal corridor of the Midnight Research Outpost, hopping for just a few minutes of peace. The outpost was always noisy during the day, scientists running, machines humming, alarms beeping. But at night it became still, almost like a sleeping giant resting its tired bones. Enjoyed this quiet more than anything. It gave him space to breathe, to think, to remember there was life beyond broken drones and malfunctioning scanners. But on this night, peace was not waiting for him. As he turned a sharp corner, his shoulder collided with something solid. Hard, unmovable. He stumbled back, startled, expecting maybe a metal crate or a loose panel. Instead, he found himself staring at a tall figure wrapped in a long, dark cloak, standing perfectly still as if she had always been there. His heart thudded once, twice, and then nearly stopped altogether. Her skin shone a pale silver, smooth like moonlight on still water. Her eyes glowed faintly, a deep tidal red that seemed to pull him toward her and drown him at the same time. A strange energy filled the air around her, thick, cold, and ancient. And as the dim corridor lights flickered, he saw something else. Two sharp fangs curled gently behind her lips, catching the reflection of the light like polished crystal. Every whispered legend he had heard rushed into his mind. The Queen, the Vampire Monarch, the Eater of Stars, the Shadow Empress. The stories had always said she was a myth, a warning, a ghost that mothers used to scare children into obedience. Finish your food, or the Vampire Queen will take you away. But she was real, and had just bumped into her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The corridor felt colder, as if the temperature itself feared her presence. His throat went dry. His instincts screamed to run, to bow, to hide, to disappear, but his feet refused to obey. He stood frozen, staring at the most dangerous being he had ever encountered. Finally, the Queen tilted her head slightly, her silver hair sliding over her shoulder like liquid starlight. Her expression did not show anger or pain, only disbelief, as if she could not decide whether to punish him or laugh at his foolishness. Her voice was soft, but each word fell heavy in the air. "Are you trying to die human?" Flinched at the question, he tried to speak, but his voice didn't work. He coughed once, forcing the words out with shaky breath. "And no, I didn't see you." The Queen stepped closer. Her cloak whispered against the floor, a sound too soft for someone so powerful. Wanted to back away, but his legs felt rooted in the ground. When she reached him, she leaned forward slightly, studying his face with slow, deliberate attention. Her glowing eyes narrowed. "Humans," she murmured, "always rushing, always blind. You see nothing except what you expect to find." Swallowed hard, he knew he should apologize again, bow kneel, do something respectful, but fear had numbed his thoughts. He managed only a quiet whisper. I'm sorry." The Queen let out a slow breath. Her gaze drifted downward for a moment, and that was when noticed it, her posture. She was standing tall, yes, but not steady. Something in her stance wavered, almost unnoticeably, like someone holding themselves together with sheer force of will. Was she hurt? The thought shocked him, a creature as powerful as her injured. He dared a tiny step forward, compelled by something he didn't understand. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Her head snapped toward him, her expression tightening. "You presume much for a human who nearly walked into his own death." But she didn't step away. And beneath the cold surface of her voice, thought he heard something else, exhaustion, pain, a loneliness so deep it echoed in the air around her. He didn't know it yet, but this single mistake, this accidental collision, had just tied his fate to the most feared queen in the galaxy, a fate that neither of them were ready for. And a bond that would change them both forever. Heart still thudded in his chest as he tried to make sense of the creature before him. The Queen, the being whose name made entire planets tremble, was standing just a few feet away, glowing faintly in the dim light of the corridor. He expected her to strike, to sink those sharp fangs into his throat, to end him instantly. But she didn't move. Not yet. Instead, she watched him, her eyes unreadable, like twin moons reflecting distant storms. "You should leave," she said, voice low, but each word carried weight sharp enough to cut. "Or I will make your end quick." Swallowed and tried to calm the fear that clawed at his lungs. He knew running would be foolish. She could outpace him in a heartbeat, but his mind refused to stay still. Something about her told him that she wasn't just dangerous, she was hurting. I can't just leave, he said, voice trembling. You're hurt, aren't you? Her eyes widened slightly, but only for a moment. Then her lips curved in the faintest trace of a smile, sharp and humorless. You presume to see pain in the eyes of a queen? She asked, stepping closer. The corridor seemed to shrink, the air thickening around them. Humans are weak. You cannot possibly understand what I endure. Shook his head. Maybe I don't understand, but I do know what it is to be in pain, and I know what it is to survive it. Her gaze fixed on him, and for the first time her posture softened, though just slightly. She leaned against the wall, revealing a faint stain of dark violet along the side of her cloak. The color made stomach twist. She was wounded, not just physically, but in some way that emanated from her very being. You are reckless, she said, voice sharper now. Most humans would already be nothing. Maybe, replied, stepping a careful inch closer. But I'm still here, and I can help. The queen's red eyes studied him like a hunter weighing a mouse's courage. You would risk your life for me, she whispered, disbelief lacing every word. A human offering aid to the Eater of Stars. Yes, said simply. I don't care who you are, you shouldn't be alone like this. The corner of her mouth twitched, a reaction she probably hadn't felt in centuries. Her eyes softened slightly, though her aura remained lethal. No one stands by me willingly, she murmured. All they see is fear or power or the reward of death, yet you stand anyway. His pulse raced. Someone has to, otherwise pain just consumes you. The queen tilted her head, a gesture of curiosity, of surprise. She had never met a human who spoke to her without trembling, without greed, without terror. And in that fleeting moment, realized that he was not just seeing a legend. He was seeing a being who had carried the weight of an empire and now, perhaps for the first time in centuries, was fragile. You are a strange one, she said softly, almost to herself. A human who defies instinct and reason for a creature that could kill him in an instant. And maybe that's what makes humans special, replied. We have courage even when we're afraid. We can choose to care even when it seems pointless. Her lips parted slightly. She took a measured breath and for a heartbeat thought he saw a flicker of something dangerous yet human. Curiosity, trust, longing. You speak of choices, she said, voice low, and yet everything in my existence has been determined by duty, hunger, and power. I have forgotten the meaning of choice. Then let me remind you, said, taking a cautious step closer. Let me remind you that even a queen can have someone on her side, someone who won't let her fall. For the first time in centuries, the queen of the hesitated. Her fangs gleamed faintly, but she did not strike. Her glowing eyes held him, studying, weighing, perhaps wondering if a human could truly be brave enough to touch the darkness she carried. Realized that night in that quiet corridor the impossible had happened. The predator had paused, and the human, small, fragile mortal, had become more than prey. He had become a choice. And in that fragile moment, with the hum of the outpost around them and the faint scent of her strange blood in the air, knew one thing clearly. His life had changed forever. Because he had met the queen and she had noticed him, the corridor felt heavier than before, as if the air itself was afraid to move around them. His eyes could no longer ignore the subtle shift in the queen's stance. The faint violet stain along her side, the way her shoulders tensed and relaxed unevenly, told him what he had been too afraid to admit. She was injured. You're bleeding, he said quietly, his voice steady even as his pulse raced. The queen's glowing eyes flickered, a mixture of surprise and irritation. A human dares to notice my wounds? She asked sharply. But the sharpness lacked its usual bite, replaced with a fragile edge he had never expected. Yes, he replied simply, and I'm offering help. She stared at him, silent for a long moment. Then her lips curved into a thin, humorless smile. Do you truly understand what it means to offer help to a being like me? I might not, said, stepping closer, but I understand courage, and I understand pain. For a heartbeat, the queen seemed to consider his words. Then she looked away, her eyes clouded with something deep and ancient. Something could not name, yet recognized instantly as loneliness. My people, she murmured finally, they would see this as weakness. A queen, injured and attended by a human, they would consider me unfit to rule. You're not ruling anyone right now, said softly. You're hurt, and no one deserves to face that alone. Her gaze returned to him, sharp and cold, but tinged with uncertainty. Do you truly not fear death? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. You stand before the Eater of Stars, the Destroyer of Worlds, and yet you offer aid. I am afraid, admitted, but I choose to help anyway. Fear doesn't make someone weak, doing nothing does. The Queen's lips parted slightly. She studied him, and for the first time saw something beyond her terrifying legend, vulnerability. A quiet fragility hidden beneath layers of power and cruelty. Slowly, she shifted her stance, allowing a closer look at the wound. The line of her blood shimmered faintly, pulsing as if alive with some dark energy. It wasn't ordinary injury. It radiated a strange, alien pain that even he, a trained human medic, could feel in his chest. I cannot allow you to touch that, she said, but her voice wavered. I won't hurt you, said firmly. I just want to help you survive it. She looked at him for a long moment, the corridor silent except for the soft hum of the outpost's life support. Then, with surprising grace, she nodded ever so slightly. Very well. Show me, human. Show me if you can endure what most would flee from. Knelt carefully beside her, examining the wound. He did not understand her biology fully, but he had trained his hands to steady energy, to calm the flow of blood in creatures far more alien than herself. He worked methodically, his focus unwavering, though his mind raced with questions. You handle this well, the Queen said quietly, her voice closer now, almost confiding. I have not felt such care in decades. Then it's not just about helping, said softly. It's about making sure you don't fall alone. Her eyes softened, a strange light dancing within them, faint but undeniable. The weight of centuries seemed to lift slightly from her shoulders, replaced by a fragile connection that neither of them had expected. You are remarkable, she whispered, her usual commanding tone replaced by awe. A human who dares to face death for someone like me. And you, said, looking into her glowing eyes, are someone worth saving. For the first time, the Queen allowed herself a small, genuine breath of relief. The wound was still there, but in his hands, it no longer felt like the end. It felt like a beginning. And in that quiet, dim corridor, the impossible happened. The human touched the heart of a being who had long believed herself untouchable. A predator paused, and a human, tiny, fragile, and brave, became more than a mere passerby. He became a lifeline. Looked at her, heart pounding. She looked back, eyes soft, guarded, and yet, for the first time, alive in a way she had not been in centuries. Neither spoke for a long time. Words were unnecessary. The bond had formed in silence, in care, in courage. And as the cold corridor hummed around them, realized that he had stepped into something far greater than fear, far greater than legend. He had stepped into the heart of a queen, and she, for the first time in centuries, had allowed herself to be seen. The night stretched on, and neither of them moved from that fragile, trembling space. Somewhere deep inside knew. This moment, small as it seemed, was the beginning of everything. The dim light of the outpost corridor had faded into a soft glow from the side panels, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. Remained kneeling beside the Queen, gently stabilizing the pulse of her wound with the small medical device he had carried from the infirmary. He didn't fully understand the alien energy swirling through her veins, but his hands were steady, his mind focused on one thing, keeping her alive. The Queen leaned against the crystalline pillar that ran along the corridor wall, her silver hair cascading over her shoulders like liquid metal. She had remained silent for several minutes, which, given her usual dominance, felt heavier than words. Dared not speak at first, unsure if he would anger her or trigger some defensive instinct. But the quiet pressed on him like a weight. You are persistent, human, she finally said, voice low, almost a whisper. Most would flee, most would beg for mercy or pray for death. You simply stay. Glanced up at her, brushing a stray lock of silver hair from his own face. I'm scared, he admitted honestly. I'm not invincible, but I can't just leave you here to collapse alone. Her glowing red eyes softened slightly, though she remained unreadable. You know nothing of what I endure, she said. My life, my empire, the endless tide of my people, they do not forgive weakness. Yet here you are offering aid. Why? Because someone has to, said simply. Even queens have the right to survive. He looked at her with steady eyes, full of determination and quiet warmth. Even monsters. The queen tilted her head, the first sign of curiosity breaking through the frost of her centuries-long control. Monsters, she repeated almost to herself. I am no monster, I am the queen, the predator who devours worlds. My people fear me. My enemies die before they can think. And yet, said, you bleed like anyone else, you hurt. You're not untouchable. You're human in your own way, even if it's different from mine. The words seemed to strike her, though she did not show it openly. She straightened slightly, the wound on her side pulsing faintly. Human, you dare to call me that? You know the legends of my kind. You know what humans think of us. Why would you risk yourself for me? Hesitated for a heartbeat, then said the truth he had carried in his chest since he first saw her. Because even a queen deserves someone to care. And because fear doesn't make you stronger, trust does. Courage does, compassion does. You've ruled through terror, but you can also survive through trust. The queen's breath hitched faintly, almost imperceptibly. She had heard sincerity before, but never like this, from a human who looked at her not with fear, not with worship, but with quiet determination. I do not know such words, she admitted softly, voice trembling with an emotion she had long suppressed. Power has been my shield, fear my weapon. I have not known kindness in centuries. You're not alone now, said gently. I'm here, I'm not leaving. He reached out, careful, steadying her hand as she leaned against the pillar. Let me help you heal, even if it's just a little. For the first time in centuries, the queen's aura softened. Her glow dimmed slightly, but warmth seemed to seep into the corridor. She allowed him to work, letting her fingers brush his briefly, a human touch, simple, grounding, and yet electrifying. You are strange, she whispered, a faint smile tugging at her lips. So small, so fragile, yet you shine where darkness has lived for centuries. Why? Because I choose to, said. And maybe, just maybe, you can choose to shine too, even in the dark. Her eyes met his, glowing faintly with an intensity that startled him. In that moment, predator and human were no longer separate. They were bound by something unexpected, something neither fear nor legend could touch. The corridor faded around them. Time, the endless dark of the night, and the weight of her empire slipped away. For now, there was only trust, only courage, only the fragile light of one human reaching into the heart of a queen. And for the first time in centuries, the queen allowed herself to feel it. Not power, not fear, not control, but something new, hope. By the faint glow of the outpost panels, the queen stood upright, steadying herself against the crystalline wall. Had done his best to stabilize her wound, but he knew it would not fully heal without rest and care. She looked at him, her glowing eyes sharper now, filled with a mixture of gratitude and concern. My people, she murmured, her voice low, almost unsteady. They will come for me or for you. They do not forgive interference. Crossed his arms, trying to appear braver than he felt. Then let them come, he said. I'm not leaving your side. Her eyes widened, a flicker of disbelief passing through their crimson glow. You would fight them, a human, without rank, without power, without anything to gain. I'm not doing this for gain, said quietly. I'm doing this because no one deserves to die alone, not you, not anyone. She studied him as if trying to read the truth in his expression. Humans are unpredictable, she said finally. Reckless, brave, or foolish, I cannot decide which of your kind you belong to. Maybe all three, said with a faint smile. But right now I'm here and I'm not leaving. Her lips curved slightly, a tiny smile, the first genuine one he had ever seen on a being who had ruled countless worlds. But the faint smile vanished as the corridor's heavy doors trembled. A deep, cold vibration echoed down the hall. Heavy footsteps, metallic, deliberate, threatening. They're here, she said, voice tight with warning. My betrayers. Tensed, gripping the metal rod he had found nearby, it was crude but better than nothing. I said I'm not leaving, he said. Looked at him, her fangs just barely visible as her lips parted. You are reckless, human. You know you stand against centuries of power and death. I know, said, but I'll stand anyway. The doors burst open. 3 warriors stepped inside, their armor black and gleaming, eyes burning with cold fury. The first moved forward, voice like ice. He hissed, "You betrayed the bloodline, you dared to side with a human." "I am not alone," she said, stepping in front of. Her cloak shifted around her, wings of shadow rising, making her appear larger, more terrifying than the legends claimed. The human held the rod, his hands shaking slightly, but his resolve stronger than ever. "You will not touch him," she said, her voice deadly. "You protect a human," the leader spat. "After centuries of loyalty and fear, you protect a mortal." "I protect who I choose," she said, the red glow in her eyes flaring. "Step closer and you will regret it." The warriors laughed, low and cruel, and then the corridor erupted into motion. They struck with impossible speed, shadows leaping and claws flashing. Dodged, blocked, his rod scraping against dark armor, sparks flying. He was far from a match, but he refused to collapse. The queen moved with fluid, terrifying grace, striking, dodging, and protecting him with every ounce of her power. One warrior lunged for, claws out, ready to pierce. Froze, then felt a sharp movement as intercepted the strike with her bare hand. Pain shot through her side, reopening the wound, but she did not falter. "You will not harm him," she roared. Her voice echoed down the corridor, an anthem of raw power, determination, and fury. Realized something astonishing. The queen, who had once ruled through terror alone, was now standing not just to fight her enemies, but to protect him. And in that act, he felt a surge of hope so strong it nearly blinded him. The corridor became chaos, shadows and light clashing with the fury of ancient power. And amidst it all, moved with courage he never thought he possessed, his fear transformed into determination. He would not let her fall. And she would not let him fall either. As blows landed and energy flared, the impossible truth became clear. For the first time in centuries, predator and human were no longer prey and hunter. They were allies, bound by choice, courage, and trust. The battle had just begun, but so had something far more dangerous, the bond between a queen and the human who refused to flee. The corridor was a storm of shadows and light. The warriors moved like living darkness, their claws slicing the air and armor gleaming like black stars. Felt every instinct in his body scream to run, but he stayed rooted, gripping the metal rod with every ounce of courage he could summon. He was outmatched, there was no denying it, but he refused to let fear control him. Moved like a storm herself, her cloak and hair whirling around her as she struck and deflected, protecting at every moment. Her glowing eyes flared, crimson fire in the dim corridor, her power radiating in waves that rattled metal panels and pushed the attackers back. Yet with every move could see the toll it took. Her side wound reopened, dark violet blood staining the pristine floor, but she did not falter. "You will not touch him," she roared, voice echoing like thunder. Felt his heart pound harder. One warrior lunged at him, claws aimed straight for his chest. He barely blocked with his rod, sparks flying as metal met energy-tipped claws. Pain shot up his arms, but he did not retreat. He could feel his presence behind him, shielding him, striking at every opportunity. "You are reckless," she hissed, eyes glowing. "Do you not see your end?" "I see it," said Josette, "but I'm not going down alone." The warriors laughed, sharp and cruel, but even their cruelty could not shake him. One by one they underestimated him, thinking him weak, thinking him foolish. But humans were unpredictable, dodged, jabbed, and moved with a determination that surprised even himself. Every strike he blocked, every second he survived, was a promise he would protect her. His power flared, a wave of energy that sent one warrior crashing against the wall. Another leapt forward, fangs bared, but intercepted with his rod, redirecting the strike just enough for to finish the attack with a devastating burst of energy. Her eyes met his, and in that split second, a silent understanding passed between them. She was the predator of countless worlds, but he was her reason to fight tonight. Not duty, not fear, not power, him. "You are a strange creature," she whispered, almost to herself as she deflected another strike. "So small, yet so fierce." "And you are stronger than any darkness," replied, dodging a claw and swinging the rod toward a fallen panel to create a barrier. "Stronger than anyone who has ever faced you." The final warrior advanced, the last obstacle between them and survival. tensed, crimson energy swirling around her, but stepped forward. He raised his rod one last time, blocking the strike, buying her a fraction of a second, and that was all she needed. A burst of her raw power erupted, a controlled surge of crimson and violet energy that hurled the last warrior across the corridor. Silence fell, heavy and shocking. The three warriors lay still, defeated by the impossible alliance of human and queen. Sank to her knees, breathing hard, blood seeping from her wound. Rushed forward, steadying her as she leaned against him. The corridor was quiet now, the echoes of battle fading into the cold metal walls. "You," she said finally, her voice low, trembling with exhaustion and something else, something he could not name. "You risked your life for me, a human, a creature you barely knew. Why?" "Because I had to," said, holding her gently. "Because no one should face death alone, even a queen." Her glowing eyes softened, her usual intensity replaced by something fragile and alive. "Humans, you are different than I believed. You do not bow to fear or power. You choose courage." "And I choose you," he said simply. For a long moment, she stared at him, the weight of centuries and empires pressing against her, yet she allowed herself to lean into his care. The predator who had ruled through fear, the being who had devoured countless worlds, finally allowed herself to be vulnerable. "You are a strange light," she whispered, voice barely audible. "In all my darkness, you are the first human to shine for me." Smiled softly, "And you are stronger than the darkness you carry." For the first time in centuries, felt something she had never allowed herself, trust. And for the first time realized something incredible. The legend of the Queen was not just of terror, but of the capacity for connection. The corridor was silent, but the bond between them burned brighter than any power, stronger than any fear, and more enduring than any threat. They had survived the night, together, and neither would ever be the same again. The corridor was quiet now, except for the slow hum of the outpost's life support. The defeated warriors lay still, shadows stretched across the floor. Held in his arms, her side wound still bleeding faintly, but her strength slowly returning. She was heavy with centuries of power and pain, yet in that moment she allowed herself to lean on him, a queen who had ruled worlds now trusting a human to keep her alive. "I asked if you wanted to die," said quietly, her crimson eyes searching his. "And yet you stood here, you risked everything to save me." "I'm here," said softly, brushing a hand along her silver hair. "I promised I'm not leaving." Her fangs showed faintly as she smiled, a fragile curve that carried centuries of both sorrow and authority. "Humans, you are foolish and brave in ways I cannot understand." She paused, taking a shuddering breath. "I ruled through fear for so long, through pain, through solitude, and yet for the first time I feel something else." Looked into her glowing eyes, steady and kind. "You don't have to rule through fear anymore. You can choose another way. You can survive and still be who you are, strong, powerful, and alive." Her gaze dropped to the faint scar along her side, then back to him. "I never imagined a human could make me feel hope, or connection, or trust." Her voice trembled, and for the first time she sounded uncertain, mortal even. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been here." "You wouldn't have been alone," said firmly. "Not tonight, not ever again if I can help it." Studied him, weighing centuries of solitude against this one mortal. Then she made a choice that no one, not her people, not her enemies, not even the universe itself, could have predicted. She leaned closer, her glowing eyes soft, her hand brushing his. "Then I choose to trust you, Cole, not as prey, not as a servant, but as someone I allow into my life, someone I allow to care." Felt warmth bloom in his chest. He squeezed her hand gently. "And I'll keep that promise. I'll stay by your side through every battle, every storm, every shadow." Her lips curved into a small, genuine smile. "You are a strange creature," she whispered, almost laughing softly. "A human who dares to face death to save a queen, and yet, perhaps my world needs more of your kind." They moved slowly from the corridor to a safer chamber nearby, the weight of the night pressing on them but no longer crushing. She let him support her fully now, leaning on him not just for physical strength, but for the strange, fragile trust she had never allowed herself to feel before. "Humans," she murmured softly, "you are unpredictable, reckless, and perhaps the only beings who can teach an old queen that there is more to life than power and fear. And maybe queens, said quietly, can learn from humans too. For the first time, laughed, a sound not terrifying, not commanding, but light and human-like, echoing softly through the chamber. The warmth of that sound wrapped around, and he realized the depth of what they had just survived. Not just the battle, but the opening of hearts, the crossing of worlds, the forging of a bond neither legend nor fear could break. She looked at him, eyes shining, faint traces of exhaustion softened by relief. I allowed you to see me, truly see me, and for that I am grateful, more than words can express. I don't need words, he said. Just promise me you'll keep living, not ruling, not hiding, just living. Nodded slowly, her lips brushing his hand in a gesture of both gratitude and trust. I will, because you remind me that even in darkness there can be light. Smiled, his heart pounding. Then we walk forward together, through the dark, through the storm together. She rose fully now, leaning slightly against him, regal yet vulnerable, dangerous yet alive, carrying centuries of power and pain with a new strength, the strength of trust, of choice, of connection. And as they stepped from the chamber into the silent corridors, the first rays of a distant sun, or perhaps artificial light in the outpost, glinted off the metal floors. For the first time in centuries, the Queen of walked not as a predator feared by worlds, but as someone who had chosen to trust, to care, and to survive alongside a human. And knew, deep in his bones, that they had changed each other forever. Together they were no longer hunter and prey. They were a force neither legend, fear, nor time could undo. And somewhere in that quiet they both understood. The night had passed, but the bond would endure for a lifetime, and perhaps beyond it.